Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Hilliard, and our newest speaker for EA Zoom meetings today is Joanne Borlase. She's an author and a former professional ice skater, as well as a graduate of Soulwise Astrology School. Her website is joanneborlase.com, and I will put her contact information into the description of the video. Welcome, Joanne. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Sue, for the wonderful introduction, and much gratitude to you, Robin and Jordan, for being here, and everyone else that's been able to attend. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to be here to present this very brief overview on two important elements in astrology called phases and aspects. And I was inspired to do something a little bit different, to try and show in physical form how natural laws in nature correlate with the astrological phases and aspects. And at the same time, I'll still refer a bit to human psychology as well, using the two planets being Venus and Pluto, which are the Scorpio, Aries, and Taurus, Libra archetypes. And you're also going to notice in this presentation how these phases also have much in common with the moon's monthly 8 phase cycle, being from the new phase to the crescent phase to the gibbous to the full phase. And then there's the disseminating last quarter. Oh, I forgot the first quarter. There's also first quarter, gibbous, full phase, disseminating last quarter, and then the balsamic phase. So I'm no orchardist or gardener or botanist, and I'm eons away from ever being an expert in astrology. I'm still a student, a very humble student, still learning. So please forgive me if I've not done enough research here. And also, please feel free to share your thoughts and opinions on whatever you think or feel. So this is part one. Mm. Four, and I'll be going through the four quadrants, also known as the four seasons, while reflecting upon the apple tree's growth life cycle. I won't go into anything technical or math or calculations. This is only a very basic overview of the energies, and I won't be mentioning every aspect either, just the main ones. No signs, really, just keeping it very simple, and won't be actually looking at a natal chart or a synastry chart or anything like that. It's just all very simple. I'll be focusing mostly from the Northern Hemisphere's perspective, but I'll mention a little bit about the Southern Hemisphere too. So let's begin. In looking at the hemispheres briefly in astrology, whoops, I went too fast. You'll notice that the Earth's orbit around the sun is not perfect, and neither is the solar system nor the universe in time space degrees. With these northern southern hemispheres, June 21st marks summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. Uh, that's due to the Earth's tilt on its axis and the sun following along the ecliptic path. This is where the sun's warm rays and life force peak in the northern, while in the southern, the sun's warm rays and life force pulls away, giving the southern hemisphere their colder months, and almost as if the warmth and the light rises through the earth and emerges in the north, and the light in the south will be minimal, and in the north we get the longest day of the year. On December 21st, this marks winter solstice in the northern hemisphere and summer solstice in the southern or northern and southern in the southern hemisphere's winter solstice. So it's much colder in the northern hemisphere, and we've got the shortest, darkest day of the year with the least amount of daylight. And in the southern hemisphere, the sunlight and warmth are peaking and giving them the longer day of the year. And life is buzzing, bustling about down there. It's as if all the sun's warmth and life force from the northern hemisphere, where it was, has sunk deep into the soil, traveled through the earth, and it's emerged and arrived down under in the south. And the trees in the north fall into a slumber and hibernate. And though all the sun's warmth and energy is still around the earth, it's still here. It's just that it's gone south. So the reason why I'm emphasizing these two hemispheres is that there is something um, uh, in that's very similar. They're wet temperaments, they're wet times of the year. So whether it's Cancer or Capricorn, you're still going to get a similar temperament. And Cancer, this is on the Cancer Capricorn axis. So we've got Cancer, it's summer, it's rain, up in the northern, and in the winter time, they've got snow. Either way, there's high precipitation going on in both hemispheres at the same time. So I just wanted to point that out. The summer we've got the wet with the rain, and then the winter, there's whether it's the north or the south, there's the snow, which is in a more solidified form. And yeah, both are equal wet temperaments. Of course, all plant life relies on seasonal changes too, and how those conditions are to survive. So if colder temperatures last longer, the tree's going to develop later. And if warmer temperatures arrive earlier, plants and trees will obviously bloom their buds, flowers, and fruit earlier. And this is what to expect and how the energy plays out in the seasons. And many of the photos, not all, but many that I'm using are going to be from the Northern Hemisphere perspective. I believe in the UK, and special thanks to Darren Turpin, who's a professional orchardist and gardener who permitted me to use many of these photos. They're beautiful. And also thank you for his knowledge, in which he was kind enough to answer many questions that I had. The apple tree's development stages in the photos that I'm going to be showing, they may be off by a few weeks or a month, seasonally, depending upon other global locations. But this is mostly research done and a presentation to reflect the astrological phases and aspects, and not the actual precise dates of when an apple tree growth occurs. That part's all up to Mother Nature. Just moving on in my slides here. This is very common knowledge, but I just thought I'd do a little bit of an overview on it. How plants are highly intelligent beings, how they eat from the nutrients in the soil. They also eat insects. They drink water. They also drink the sugar, like in the form of sap. They re-energize from that, or the starch. They have hormones. They rest and sleep as well, which is dormancy. They also bleed and suffer cuts and wounds through their sap, which is, there's a lot of intelligence here that connects with humans. And they store carbohydrates like starch and sugar for energy. They also breathe, which is their respiration through lenticels. So, you can see, I don't know if you see my mouse here, but there's these
Yes.
little specks, the white specks, dots um, on fruit or on the leaves. You can kind of see them a little bit in here. Also in the bark, the tree bark, the branches, they're all over. And that's how um, they process respiration. So they breathe through these, they're like tiny pores. And process is where oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide. for photosynthesis to occur through the sunlight. Even roots require oxygen, which they can get from small air pockets within aerated soil, which is significant for their growth. And during the colder months, the respiration declines and the air exchange is through the soil and the roots. And during warmer months, respiration increases through the bark, branches, stems, leaves, flowers, and fruit. So they, interestingly, also respond to their environmental stimulus and can sense things. And the significance of this is the archetype of Taurus, which is about the five senses. So they touch through vibration, electrical impulses on a molecular level. There's also scent that they give off, which attracts insects and helps in procreation. They feel warmth and they feel cold. So they know temperature of when to break dormancy and when to enter dormancy, hibernation. And they're also sensitive to light and darkness through photosynthesis and dormancy. And another thing that's fascinating is they communicate with one another secretly and silently, especially when threatened or struggling, and they have a language of their own through signals, vibrations, scents, and pheromones. And they use their root system to communicate. There's a website also providing evidence of this called the Wood Wide Web, WWW. So you can find all kinds of fascinating information there about this communication skill that they've got. And apples and the trees, they have healing properties. For example, an astringent in apple cider vinegar for those suffering from ailments such as colon issues, or also in healing through herbalism. And they're full of antioxidants, vitamin C, etc. So I just wanted to touch base on all of that because I think that it's important. It really reflects the Taurus archetype. So moving on, another thing to consider here is the alchemical reactions that create and sustain life. And so in astrology, it's not just, the signs or the planets that or the houses that we look at. There's also the elements, the modalities, and qualities, the temperaments, the temperatures, and the opposing complementary forces. So with the elements, we're looking at the basically the fire signs, the earth signs, the air, and then there's the water. Then we come into the modalities, which are the cardinal, fixed, and mutable energies. There's the temperaments, which I also made a certain note of on my slides, the choleric houses, which are fire, the phlegmatic houses, which are the earth signs, the sanguine houses or signs, which are air, and then the melancholic ones, which are water. And then we also look at temperature, which is hot and dry, hot and wet, cold and dry, or cold and wet. And the opposing complementary forces that are also significant in the astrology is the nocturnal yin passive cool forces versus the diurnal yang dominant and hot forces. So yeah, we don't usually use the feminine or masculine anymore. We use yin or yang. Hopefully I pronounce those right. Yeah, those are very important, especially in nature. It's all about the chemical processes going on. Moving on to this next slide. Um, I took these photographs and I just want to point out that evolution and consciousness are not linear. And as you can see, there's an overlapping of these seasons going on. So this was summer when I took the photographs, and you can see all this green leaves and life force bustling around. And when you look down on the ground, you can see all the decay still happening. And this is from last year, possibly the fall. And even when I look over here in this picture, I think this could even be 2 years prior. So um, again, evolution and consciousness are not linear; they're overlapping. And uh, you have to kind of look at the fact that even though there's things within us decaying, there's new things that are being rebirthed as well. And it's that Scorpio archetype type of death and rebirth happening here, which is all part of the past, the present, and then moving into the future. It's all like this dance of life and death and rebirth. And so, you have to kind of consider that even when a building is being structured, the building's going up, it may look and appear in its process from the outside going up in a linear fashion upward, but there's all kinds of stuff going on the inside, and sometimes they'll have to take out a floor and redo it or redo the walls, or so there's always these layers of structuring happening in nature and also in our own consciousness, human consciousness. Um, so in moving on, I just really wanted to reflect upon that. So there's a lot of symbolism and mysticism about the apple tree and apples, which is really fascinating. It's about in looking, there's lots of things I can say. I mean, I can talk about the macrocosm, microcosm, as above, so below, which I've got illustrated here. But there's going to be later on in my other parts where I'm going to show uh, different aspects of the symbolism and mysticism. I think I might have spelled mysticism wrong. Anyway, it should be a C, not an S there. But there's lots, like there's the Adam and Eve story, there's the Snow White story. I'll be getting to a little bit more of those. I just thought that this part of my presentation would be quite suitable because there's, looking of the above and the below processes going on right now in my presentation, which I'm explaining. Um, Whoops, I went too far. Yeah. Um, yeah, we've got the tree of knowledge here and the tree of life, how it correlates with the philosophy of as above, so below. So that what's occurring in the celestial spheres also impacts the terrestrial planes. And for example, the moon's effect on the monthly cyclic tides is true evidence of this happening, these forces going on. We're also living in our own reflection, the outer life mirroring the inner life, and vice versa. And then there's cause and effect playing out with the macrocosm, microcosm, as above, so below, resulting in our karma. And then, with the human body, we've got like the head or the brain is like the top part of the tree with all its nerve cells in the brain. And then we've got the branches, and the leaves are like the human arms and fingers. And then the trunk being the body. And then our legs and toes represent the root system of a tree. And so the microcosm and macrocosm, it's basically being the big or outer world versus the small and inner world, and how they interrelate, they intersect and overlap and impact one another. So I just wanted to throw this next slide in. Whoops, Johnny Appleseed. His name is really John Chapman, and he's a blessed soul. He was born here September 26, 1774, which is interesting because Pluto was in Aquarius then, and he helped populate apple trees throughout the US. And I picked this slide or this picture here because I didn't want the pan on his head, which he's so well known for that picture. He didn't wear it on his head. He had it in his knapsack attached to it. So I thought this was a nice, respectable picture of him. And yeah, so moving on. So getting to these slides here, I just want to say thank you again, Sue, for this chart, loaning this to me or giving this slide to me of the phases and aspects. So here there's 360 degrees going around the chart, and we've got the four quadrants. So we've got like the ascendant, the descendant, and then we have the MC and the IC. And each sectioned off as a quadrant. So this is spring, summer, fall up here, and winter. And within each of these quadrants are the 8 phases. And this is where the moon's monthly phase cycle comes in a little bit as well. And each quadrant contains 2 phases and several aspects, as you can see. Um, the aspects are these things here. And like I said before, I'm not going to do every single aspect. It's way too much, too long. So I was just going to focus on the 2 new phases here, the new phase and the crescent phase. And I've got the moon also just to show how this would appear in the sky. And usually new phase, you can't really see the moon when it's just changed, transition to birthing a new moon. It's invisible in the sky, but as it slowly, the days start to pass, you start to see the small little, um, like a fingernail crescent, and then it enlarges a little bit more, and we get into the crescent phase. So, yeah. Um, So this is the new phase. It's a gateway and it's transitional. This is known as the conjunction. There's a lot of potent energy here. And the key word I use or that I found in my research online is called power. And this is Aries. This is a very, very Aryan energy, very Aryan aspect. It's fire, cardinal, hot, dry, choleric, diurnal, and yawn energy, and it marks spring. And this is where there's a new evolutionary intention and initiating a new beginning. This is the ground that's cracking open. New life is pushing upward. The insects are emerging and the bees are also waking from hibernation. This is a spark of life. It's an instinctual emergence and it's very impulsive and random. Um, it's it's about self and freedom orientation. And the apple tree and its buds, they contain all the DNA and blueprint needed to grow, to become more than what it really is, to become that ultimate apple tree. And there's a taproot also that's already formed at this point, and the tree is surviving off of it right now as almost like an umbilical cord seeking nutrients and water within the soil, but yet it's here. It's arrived and it's got this identity oriented energy of like, who am I? What am I? And there's this desire to discover in this energy of what this who or what I am is about. Um, Also, although the Aries energy can be quite violent and powerful in birthing life, there's a fragility to it as well during this time. And as you can see, there's this tight cluster early to mid-April around this time. You can see this Aries glyph. You see the Aries sign in the life as it's, it's like peeling open. And in this, whoops, this slide here, we've got the threat of, frost or snow that can delay growth or even damage or kill these new buds. And then here we've got like the buds they're packed inside. They haven't sprung yet, but they're packed inside here in this bud in a tight cluster. And we usually get around 2 to 6 buds. The first one in the middle cluster is the king, and it's the most important. The rest usually, when you're growing an apple tree, the rest get pinched off. And moving to the next slide, um, this I thought this was a significant showing too of the Aries archetype. You can see in the first, the to the left, the bright green dewy tendril just emerging and initiating itself as it's fighting its way through the soil from the seed, which is quite a feat for such a young, fragile being, showing its strong Aryan warrior impulse to push through the soil against gravity that's holding and pulling it back down to the ground. And this tiny sprout is just birthed its way out of source or mother's womb, which is Pisces, and is beginning its evolutionary journey fueled by instinct. And you can see it, the growth happening um, in this second slide it's the middle one. It's cupped. The tendrils inside are trying to push their way out. Yeah, this is like all, it's an unfurling process, and it's very restless, and it's also skittish and very much a vibrational impulse process going on. And the roots are also interesting in that they mainly grow downward to the pull of gravity, which where the stems, they grow upward through, I think it's called photop phototropism. I think that's how you pronounce it. And if you try holding a stem down during especially its early stage growth, it's still going to try to grow upward toward the light because of a hormone called auxin. So there's a lot of power in these little shoots that are just coming up. But they still got that fragility to them as well because, they haven't lived all along, but they've got that blueprint. And yeah, again, you can see the Aries glyph opening up here as the apple seed, the seedling, the leaves are just coming out. Yeah, you can see them right in here, these little leaves emerging. And again, the Aries glyph showing here. So yeah, moving on. So that's basically the conjunction phase. And then moving into the next, or not the phase, the aspect, the next aspect is the semi-sextile. So here we've got irritation. It's Taurus is beginning here. It's got this Aries essence still going on because it's got that new phase stuff. But it's now Earth energy coming in. It's fixed, cold, dry, melancholic, and nocturnal. And the yin is being stimulated by the yang energies. And so we've got this burst of random energy in the new phase, which begins slowing down, and it's trying to uh, slow and shape itself and structure of what it is. And so there's this balancing and the structure happening. A lot of control is necessary to harness for a specific purpose. The seedling begins to sense again. That sensing Taurus is coming in. It begins to sense certain directions of where to act and move towards. And this is also a stage of budding promise in discovering its new evolutionary intention. And when we look at the flowers here, you can see there's like this budding promise in discovering its new evolutionary potential. The honey and sap is also starting to flow here, and the apple tree's fragrance is emerging, attracting bees for pollination. And again, Taurus, that procreation impulse going on, which is also part of the Taurus archetype. The smell, which is one of Taurus's five senses, smell, which is part of the Taurus archetype as well. So yeah, with the procreation impulse, Taurus, grafting's usually done in late April or early May, depending on climate and Mother Nature. So yeah, this is where you get pollen from other tree sources to produce the fruit. And basically, if you were to take a seed from an apple and try to plant it or grow it into a seedling and then plant it, you're not going to get this, not likely to get the species you want. It's like a maverick that you'd be going for, but you don't really know, what kind of apple is this, and it may not be as tasty as the ones you get at the supermarket. So that's why we do, or there is grafting to produce the kinds of species that you want. And again, going back to the procreation forces happening here. And at this point, the tree sap is also beginning to flow. It's the perfect time for the grafting to occur. And an apple tree that doesn't get grafted, it will not likely produce much fruit for about 10 years. Whereas a grafted tree will begin to bear fruit within about 3 to 4 years, maybe even earlier. So generally, apple trees can start to be grafted when they're around 1 to 2 years old, but they say it's important to wait um, so that the tree is big enough and sturdy enough to support the weight of the apples and also survive the stress of the grafting process too. So moving on, this is the crescent phase coming up now. So this is a new gateway. It's like a doorway opening up for a different type of energy to come in. And we're looking at the aspect of semi-square here. The key word is frustration, and it's very Taurus. Again, we've got the earth fixed, full, dry, melancholic, nocturnal yin on energies happening. So the seedling to the right, it's really, really grown here, and it's trying to slow itself down and root something. But this new form is also what's happening inside is it's stimulating further growth within the tree. And a certain amount of isolation is needed to integrate what's been discovered. So in the prior, I was showing you also when we've got the branches happening with the new buds blooming. It's basically there's this new thing that's being discovered, which is apple buds. And so, you've got these flowers that are really starting to bloom here. And when you're seeing all of this, you can see like there's this meaning coming out, um, this valuing of what it is of this new growth. And, it's really coming into picture and manifesting a purpose in its individual way. And there is some kind of a cherishing to it as well. And it's like the apple tree is showing off its pretty blooms, and it's also giving off fragrance into, the air and so that it can be picked up by the bees. So, nature in a way is kind of flirting with itself. Um, yeah, and there's almost this withdrawal here too. So, although there's this emergence happening, there's still this withdrawal where there's inner growth that's taking place as well, from the past ways of being in the new phase. It's giving it a further individuality here. And there's a reliance on its own resources because Taurus is also about self reliance, self sufficiency, survival. Um, so the tree is actually feeding off its own sap, its sugar for energy to, make these blooms come out. It needs a lot of energy for that. And within these flowers, there's still, the growth, the external growth is it's becoming limited. Like what else can it do? And of course, evolution is just never ending. It's a constant process, mm, always in layers. And so, with the external growth being limited now with these flowers that are out here, um, there's something that is going on inside of them. Like, why did these petals come off? There's this petal drop that is starting to occur. You can see it happening here. Their petals are drying up. So also during this time, a gentleness is required with these blooms because flowers, excuse me, I just have to take a drink here. Flowers are also a source of food for animals. And so there's this gentleness required because these flowers and the tree can become a victim of pest, disease, injury by animals or humans, violent weather and wind patterns, and also animals that come around and start eating these flowers and buds. And so, yeah, these branches are and buds are very fragile and tender in their first few months or years, like the tree that's slowly growing. And so, yeah, moving on, we've got the petal drop here. That's actually even in a deeper process here. And this is the sextile where there's opportunity. That's the key word. And this is very Gemini. It's air, mutable, hot, moist, or wet, sanguine, diurnal. Yan here is stimulated by the yin energies. So there's this prior internalized action, which is the Taurus part, providing that's provided because it's done some work here, ease for the next stage of outward growth. But also a laziness can occur here. And so there's this petal drop, it lets go its petals. But then there's something underneath that, and there's a discovery of what is uniquely individualistic, that's emerging fruit, that's started developing. Thus, this is the new evolutionary purpose, which is to bear fruit. And, the wind here is also at work being Gemini, it gets a little bit windier and drier this time of year. The wind helps to strengthen the branches, the stems, the trunks during this time of year as it moves through the leaves. And you really see also the green. The green is beautiful in June. You start to really see how vibrant it is. It's like this hooker's green color comes out. Whoops. And I'm just showing over here 1 to 2 year apple trees. So during this time, the branches that come out, the blooms and buds, they're very precious. They can be eaten or chewed off by deer, and a lot of times they're cut off or pinched off if there's any blooms to help strengthen the tree trunk and also the branches, so that the next couple of years we'll be able to hold the apples. And then here, this is just like a first year seedling here blooming its leaves that are fluttering in the wind. And it's the time of Gemini, you really see a lot of a lot of movement, and Gemini is a very restless energy. It's constantly on the move. So I'll move on to the next slide here. Yeah. So the quintile, this is the last aspect I'm going to cover. The key word is creativity. And this is a time of, being cocooned. Something's starting to show. So you can see the fruit is even emerging further here. It's not just this, going back a slide here, these tiny little buds, they're starting to grow and enlarge more here. Um, this is a very creative, transformative time of the existing structure where there's something better than what it was to come out, and basically the fruit being a source of food for nature. So here the tree has become highly individualistic with a futuristic purpose, which is the fruit tree, the fruit. It's getting ready to take action. So, in Gemini, this is mutable energy. There's a lot of change processes going on, a lot of transformation potential. And the same way, there's, in cell growth, tremors occur. So if you were to look at a cell, even a human cell, um, fertilized cell, you can see it does this little tremor or this little wiggle before it starts to split, change, or mutate. Well, in nature too, all the mutable signs, mutable houses, they are very restless energy. There's like this movement, this wiggling going on, and it's a nervousness and unable to sit still. Um, yeah, so looking at again, we see this as above, so below, which is, the Gemini, Mercury, Hermes, Thoth, the push forward, pull backward. That's going on with this quintile. And that's what happens with this wiggle upward, downward, upward, downward. And so it's kind of going up and then wiggling this way. It's trying to break out of its current structure. And Mercury is also known as the psychopomp of above and below. He takes the story of Persephone and Hades. He takes Persephone and the dead as well into the underworld. And so he's in two places at the same time, as shown here in the Tree of Life image, which is, a duplication that is taking place as well as above, so below. Well, Mercury, um, the god Mercury, he's as above, so below, and he is the planet Mercury is the ruling planet for Gemini and the third house of, with all this stuff going on. And so I'll just move on now to the next slide. Hmm. So I'm going into now the Venus and Pluto energies, the archetypes here. In this, um, you look at Venus and Pluto, and I chose these because it's Scorpio and Taurus, and Pluto represents the soul, and Venus is the polar point of Scorpio, being Taurus, and represents all kinds of things like love, beauty, the arts. It rules two signs, Libra and Taurus. So that's where we get into love, beauty, the arts, music with Libra, harmony, balance, relationships. They are excellent negotiators, counselors, mediators. But there's always this pleasing others and being nice too, which can be a problem. There's equality, justice, sharing. And in Taurus, we're looking at the self-worth, the self-values, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, my money, possessions, talents, and abilities, what you possess, procreation, survival archetype as well with Taurus. And then we go to Pluto. Well, what's Pluto about? Um, Pluto is Scorpio. And then if you look at the opposite of Libra, you're looking at Aries, Mars. So with Pluto, you're looking at power, control, sexuality, abuse, dominance, magic, mystery, the mystical or the occult, confrontations and limitations, elimination, transformation and metamorphosis. So I'm not going to go into all these traits and energies much more, but with Mars too, you're looking at basically uh, could be, you know, anger, this action orientation, initiation, beginnings, yeah, the anger impulse, the violence possibly too is there. It's got potential for it. The just the impulse to be and of in life and just go forward without taking any pre-planned steps. Just do it. That's very Mars and Aries. So basically, looking at these charts here, we've got the new phase. So we've got Venus and Pluto here. I decided to look at it from a relationship perspective. Basically, when these two archetypes are playing out together, it's kind of like at the beginning of a dream in a relationship. So there's this triggering in a very deep and intense, meaningful way. It's exciting, very much like the new phase, but also insecurities start to emerge because it's new. You don't know what to expect, it's very unknown. Suddenly, the person is so significant to you, yet you don't know exactly why. But there's just this intriguing, drawing, pulling you to what this other person's about. And there's a little bit of darkness too, a little bit of mysteriousness in this feeling. Um, it's kind of lethal, and you can't resist it. There's just this compulsion or feeling compelled to investigate, to pursue it. Um, and it's not light. It's not, a happy-go-lucky feeling. It's very intense and powerful. And so here, there's this deep emotional intensity and desire to keep that intense first attraction feeling going on and continuing. And if it's not, and it starts to die, there's this panic that can also set in. And it's these insecurities in a relationship that begin to set in the beginning. Um, so there's also this subconscious desire for transformation through one another. It's sensed, and I think it's silently sensed, it's felt. And there's a strong sensual quality, which is the Taurus, and the sexual component, which is Scorpio. The attraction there, especially for passionate and intense sexual experiences. And the other person feels like the ultimate other, like there's no other person for you. They are the one. And so, it's very firm. Right. There's this feeling of have we met? And so that's Venus and Pluto coming together. It's really, really intense passion that you're going to see, and kind of like love at first sight. It's so intense. So it feels quite exhilarating and exciting. You suddenly feel you've met the right person of your dreams. This powerful magnetic connection, and sexual energy, and it's like a taproot of something deep that can grow and become more than what it is. And it feels huge from just that little connection, that little taproot. It's immense. So that's the conjunction. What I'm thinking, what it's like, just from experience. And The next one going into the aspect is the semi-sextile. So you've just had this initial like wow connection, and now the energy that was running really high, it begins to slow down and settle down a little bit. And so there's this desire to focus it now, to bring it into something more, to try to tame or classify the energy into something specific, like could this be a relationship? Can we make this a relationship? Such as, talking about going to meet up for, let's go for a coffee or go get a drink, or, this getting to know the other stage, getting to know person better. And this is basically a desire for substance from that initial meeting. So I see that as a semi-sextile. This is a soft aspect, but it's still important. And as I mentioned here earlier, with Taurus and Venus entering, there's those self-worth issues that come up, and self-value components that are here to be expressed. Um, so our relationship is basically forming at the semi-sextile point. I would not say it's forming at the conjunction. That's just the meet, like the explosion. The semi-sextile, I think, is extremely important. There becomes this we component to it. And the energy that was random, it's starting to narrow and ground through sensing. So you're kind of sensing each other where you're at, you're feeling each other out, which is very Taurus. Um, Trying to figure out a direction to go towards discovering what the evolutionary purpose of the initial meeting was about. And this is like there's some budding promise of something more here. It's like that time of courting, of giving flowers, the dressing up, being on your best behavior during this phase. Um, so I'm going to go to the next one here. So that's basically the new phase. Um, yeah, the conjunction and the new phase. Going into the crescent phase, which begins here at about 45 degrees. This is where there's um, a lot of Taurus going on at this point. The semi-square, it's another gateway, and this is kind of like um, it's very important. It's like the collision of energetic directions. It opposes the opposite in Scorpio, which I'll get to later on, the Sesca squadrate aspect. That will be later. So here in the semi-square, the relationship is beginning to become more serious, and more often than not, one person in the relationship begins to struggle in making it legitimate. So that's that phase that you begin to go through, and the seriousness of the relationship kind of creates fear and a resistance. Sometimes this is where one partner will want to run away or withdraw or needs some space, some time. Um, and so this can be a slowing down, intensifying energy in order to sense and ground and root deeper what the relationship is for and about. And I think if you push here, because it's Taurus, it's the bull, there may be a tendency for the other partner to not budge much. Um, and yeah, Taurus, Scorpio archetypes are fixed energies. There can be a stubbornness coming out here, or a frog in the well syndrome. Where the frog, he sees the sky, sees his initial immediate surroundings, but he has no idea that water's about to come into the well. And so he feels very safe, but um, and will not move until he has to move. And so the soul here at this point is likely struggling to move away from that initial freedom stage that it had in the new phase. And it's just struggling with not having that kind of freedom anymore. Now it's kind of being pegged down, and it's trying to adjust to all of that. Um, so yeah, moving on, we get to the sextile. So that's in this, I think actually it's right here. It's at this junction point. So at the sextile is the beginning of the Gemini. I didn't really give a good marker here, so I'm sorry about that. I'll just kind of point it out here. So it comes around this area where Gemini begins, this line here. And at the sextile, this is a time of opportunity. There's some ease of energy emerging, but also there's this need to do something with it and to value it. And so it's not that much ease. There's some kind of effort that has to go in. And being Gemini, it allows for some movement. And at this stage, there's this deeper understanding that comes in. It helps deepen and grow the relationship for it to find harmony and an inner balance of its own. And Gemini is the mind. It's Mercury. It's about communication, understanding, logic. It's about talking. Um, you know, it's also learning at this point that the relationship also is beginning to have its own skill. It's kind of like that tricycle I once talked about in another time, where you've got the two wheels, they're on the side, and then you've got that big wheel at the front, which is the relationship. So it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's moving forward. It drives the relationship. So it's kind of like an entity on its own. And so it's like a system is being created here, and that's very much Gemini, Mercury, third house archetype, that helps the relationship to function on its own and move forward. And between the partners, there's going to be more communication happening, more logic coming in, more more of a free movement. Some things are settling in a little bit here, and opportunities for the couple or the two people to grow their relationship further. And yeah, and then we get into the quintile, which is, I think it will probably be around, I think it's probably about this aspect, or sorry, whoops, it's around this point here. Um, might be around in this area here. Uh, yeah, the quintile. So I found this aspect a little difficult to research. I didn't find a lot of information, but I'm just guessing on, my own experience. It's basically a lot of creative romance or creative transformation happening here in how this quintile aspect functions. And it's again that tricycle dynamic going on, and it's ready to break out and move forward to something more than what it was. But um, there's there's this pullback. It's unable to move forward. It's kind of like it's stuck. And I'm thinking maybe there's a disbelief in the relationship that it's lasted so long, or maybe it's stumbling through some of the mistruths that could be emerging in the communication. So there's like this stuck and go feeling happening. And the relationship at this stage could be looked at as almost having a mind of its own too. And yeah, so I've kind of come to that part. And yeah, so I've pretty much gone through everything here. Um, I'm just concluding now. This is the first quadrant that I've basically covered of my presentation of phases and aspects through the apple tree. I'll be presenting the second quadrant soon. And I hope you enjoyed this and were able to get something out of it. And if you have any questions um, or comments that you'd like to make, you can, you know, contact me. Uh, Let me see here. I don't know where sorry, I think, where was this? Oh, yes, sorry. I wanted to thank, I'm just looking at my notes here. I just wanted to thank you all for your time, for coming out, and much gratitude again to Sue, Robin, and Jordan, and the EA Zoom meeting team. I very much appreciate this invite. I want to thank my magnificent teachers at Soulwise School of Evolutionary Astrology, in particular, Rose Marcus, for all of her wisdom, her guidance, and her support. And also thank the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers and the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology, and other evolutionary astrologers and astrologers abroad. Thank you so much. Um, Also, I'd like to thank Michael Zezas for always his continued wisdom, his continued guidance, support, and friendship. And I just want to say thank you again to Darren Turpin, a professional orchidist and gardener who's in the UK, for his kindness in answering all of my questions and providing me with research on the apple tree and his beautiful photos of the apple tree, which he let me use, which most can be found on his website here at orchardnotes.com. And yeah, if you'd like to contact me. Oh, sorry, I've got also, I just wanted to mention here too. Here's some schools, books, and resources on evolutionary astrology or just, evolution of the soul in general that I highly recommend. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Um, Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That was wonderful.
It was really good, Joanne.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
very,
Thanks so
very
much.
thought-provoking.
Yes.
It's a lot of information.
That it
Yeah,
is.
but that's the beauty of these is people can go back and rewatch them, you know? You did an amazing job. I feel like I love that you put this together with natural law. Like even your Aries glyph was amazing to me.
I'm looking forward to
Thanks.
part 2.
Yeah, I really tried to show that. Thank you. Yeah, I have my coordinates here, I think. If anybody's interested in contacting me, you can send me an email or contact me through my website or through my YouTube channel. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, and we'll put all of this information in the description of the video so that people can contact you. And we will look forward to part 2, 3, and 4.
Thank you so much. Thanks again.
Thank you.